Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at a legend run with a pretty cool Pokemon in the Open Master League, and that is the Shadow Gyarados. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Maki, so many thanks for the battle submission. Regular Gyarados doesn't really have the damage output that you would hope for in the Open Master League, but that's where being the Shadow can be very beneficial, as that extra bit of Shadow damage can go quite a long way, and as this trainer shows, all the way to Legend. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's check out Shadow Gyarados in the Open Master League. Tough lead in the first match, Solgaleo into Landorus, the safe switch into the Shadow Gyarados, but the opponent makes a beautiful catch as they're able to catch the Aqua Tail onto Dialga. With this team, you do need to bait out the Dialga, so this is honestly not bad. And we see here, Shadow Gyarados able to output a lot of damage onto this Dialga. The Crunch gets shielded and gets the defense drop. Dialga looking for the farm down, but Shadow Gyarados will not be denied. Able to make it to the Aqua Tail and grabbing both shields from the opponent. They exit with energy, but a Draco Meteor is not a problem for Solgaleo whatsoever. So in comes Solgaleo, it's just going to absorb the damage here from the Draco Meteor. That's not a problem at all, and get a full farm down. The opponent left with quite a lot of energy on the Landorus. We see the switch into the Shadow Dragonite to catch the Sandsear Storm. And this Dragonite, interestingly enough, is running Dragon Tail. Typically, when I run Dragonite, I do prefer Dragon Breath, as shorter turn duration moves are almost always going to be preferred. We're going to see in the back, it's a Zekrom. Zekrom is going to be met with a second Dragon Claw. This will pick up the knockout, and the opponent is left in an awkward position where they can't mud shot down a 2-shield Dragonite, and they concede the match. Picking up a slightly positive lead in the next match, Solgaleo into Dragonite. I definitely don't mind staying in here as the Solgaleo. The opponent has to debuff their attack and defense with a superpower if they want to deal any meaningful damage. The Psychic Fangs is going to connect, opponent firing as soon as they get to the superpower, and they go straight for it. Solgaleo shrugs off the damage, in comes Lugia. Lugia continuing to farm up energy, and we're going to see Solgaleo farming up and going for the Psychic Fangs bait. The bait is not shielded by the Lugia, now going for the Iron Head, and at -1 defense, this Iron Head is going to add up. The Iron Head is going to connect. Solgaleo continuing to farm. You can just let this through. A Sky Attack should barely not KO. The opponent full sends the Aero Blast. That definitely will KO. And in comes the Shadow Gyarados. Shadow Gyarados is choosing to just let the Sky Attack go and potentially look for a Dragon Breath farm down. This will leave the Gyarados low, but with a decent amount of energy. Opponent is going to send back in the Dragonite. It's going to be met with the Crunch. The Crunch into the Dragonite will be no shielded in the back. It's Ho-Oh, and the opponent is in a very difficult spot, as now they're stuck going up against a 2-shield Shadow Dragonite, and they don't really have any fast attack pressure here. They can fire off charge moves, but with 2 shields to hide behind, this Dragonite is looking very scary, and to add insult to injury, they do not get the debuff from that Sacred Fire. So the opponent in a very tough spot. They choose to let that through, but we're going to see the Dragon Tails KO the opponent and take the win. We've got mirror leads in the next match, Solgaleo versus Solgaleo. This matchup can be a bit difficult if the opponent is running Flamethrower. Staying in this matchup to start, farming up energy, opponent not even bluffing a Flamethrower, just going for the Psychic Fangs as soon as they get there. We're now going to see the save switch into the Shadow Gyarados. Opponent is going to respond with Rayquaza. Rayquaza, not an amazing response to the Shadow Gyarados. Shadow Gyarados will fire off the Crunch, grab the shield from the opponent, and get the defense drop as well. That is quite nice. Shadow Gyarados not choosing to fight for switch. Could have potentially shielded, made it to an Aqua Tail, and made a play for swap, but instead, choosing to let that through. Back in comes the Solgaleo. Solgaleo can potentially look for a farm down, but unfortunately, the energy is going to be walled by the opposing Solgaleo. So that's what the opponent is probably going to be sending in here. And they're thinking about it, waiting the timer, they will send in their own Solgaleo, going for the Psychic Fangs, but the opponent, odds are they're not going to be shielding, continuing to farm, opponent firing off another Psychic Fangs. This Solgaleo getting dangerously low. We're going to see the switch into the Dragonite in the back. It is Hisuian Avalugg, and that is really unfortunate. Firing off the superpower here, hoping for the opponent to call the bait, but they do not. choosing to let the Dragonite go, leaving it all up to Solgaleo. Solgaleo over-farming as much as possible, going for the Iron Head on charge attack priority. This is going to pick up the knockout. It's double super effective damage. Back in comes the opponent, Solgaleo, firing off the Iron Head at the last possible second. This is resisted damage. Will it be enough to KO? No, it will not, and unfortunately losing the game with both shields still available. Tough lead in the next match, Solgaleo into Ho-Oh. The Shadow Gyarados save switch is able to lure out the Dialga, which is very good news for the Shadow Dragonite in the back. Shadow Gyarados firing off the Crunch. It gets the shield, but this time does not get the debuff. This means Dialga should be able to just fully farm down if they want to, but the second Crunch is going to do a lot of damage. It's going to get that Dialga deep into the red, so the opponent gives up a shield for switch advantage, but they exit with a Draco Meteor that's not going to do a whole lot of damage to Solgaleo. It's one of the many reasons why Solgaleo is an incredibly powerful pick, its ability to absorb energy from Dialga, as Draco Meteor not going to be a problem. Looking to send in the Shadow Dragonite into the Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh will immediately fire off its Brave Bird to grab a shield from the Dragonite. Dragonite has a nice energy advantage in the back. Opponent is running Kyurem, and Kyurem down energy is in a difficult spot here. The Dragon Claw will be shielded. Shadow Dragonite making it to the Dragon Claw, but just before it gets there, we see the Dragon Claw fired off by the opponent. Going for the Dragon Claw, not wanting to take any more super effective Dragon Breaths. This Dragon Claw will be able to pick up the knockout. Back in comes the Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh looking to make it to the Brave Bird. Dragonite tries to go for charge attack priority, but lets an entire Incinerate through. But the good news is that Incinerate will not register as the Dragon Claw picks up the KO. The tough leads continue in the next match, Solgaleo into Landorus. The save switch into the Shadow Gyarados. Landorus opting to go for a Sandsear Storm, not even building up to the Stone Edge. And now we see why, as they wanted to send in Zygarde, absorb all this damage, and just fully commit to a farm down. Oh my goodness, that damage just does nothing after it's been debuffed. I'm actually quite surprised the opponent is throwing a move here, as they're not going to be able to exit with a lot of energy. Doing the play that they did, going for the Sandsear, I would have expected them to try and go for just a massive farm down, but in doing so, they don't exit with a lot of energy whatsoever, so they can't effectively threaten the Solgaleo. In comes the Shadow Dragonite. Shadow Dragonite is going to look for a farm down. The Crunch is going to be no-shielded, as Zygarde does not do a lot of damage, but it does get the defense drop. In the back, it's Mewtwo, farming up energy and firing off this Dragon Claw. The good news for the Shadow Dragonite is the opponent has very minimal fast attack pressure here. The opponent is going to throw on very good timing, but the Dragonite's defense has been debuffed, which means the Psycho Cuts are going to add up. In comes the Solgaleo. Solgaleo, with the energy advantage, able to outpace and make it to the Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs is going to be no-shielded by the opponent. Opponent throwing on, honestly, not great timing here. They're going to fire off the Sandsear Storm on 2. That's giving 2 free turns to the Solgaleo, and Solgaleo is going to be able to make it to another Psychic Fangs and pick up the knockout. Back in comes the Mewtwo. Mewtwo farming up energy. Solgaleo unable to make it to the Iron Head before the opponent is able to fire off their charge attack. It's going to be the Psy Strike. Solgaleo, oh man, not able to fire off the charge attack. The Psy Strike does not KO. Solgaleo able to hang on and make it to the Iron Head. The Iron Head is going to be no-shielded by the opponent, and one Dragon Tail is going to secure the win. Solgaleo sees a familiar lead in the next match as it leads into a Dragonite, but this time it's the Shadow. Immediate save switch into the Shadow Gyarados. Opponent is going to try and go for an Aqua Tail catch, but they're unsuccessful, and Crunch is going to connect onto Dialga. Dialga trying for the farm down here. The Shadow Gyarados gets to the Crunch, but the Dragon Breath registers, denying Gyarados the opportunity to force a shield. That is a bit unfortunate for the Gyarados. In comes the Solgaleo, just looking to absorb the Draco Meteor and get the farm down. Draco Meteor not going to be a problem for Solgaleo. The Dialga has been baited out, so this hopefully should clear the path for a potential Shadow Dragonite sweep. Firing off the Iron Head. Ironhead is going to be shielded by the opponent. In comes Shadow Dragonite, and now we have the mirror. The opponent is going to fire off the Dragon Claw. That is going to be shielded up. In the back, the opponent has Metagross. So they had a pretty similar idea for the core, but unfortunately they don't have access to Solgaleo, so they're running the inferior Metagross. The Dragon Claw is going to be no shielded, and now Dragonite looking to full send the superpower. This will knock out. Opponent is going to expend the final shield. Shadow Dragonite makes it to a last second charge attack, made it to the superpower, but unfortunately only clicked on the Dragon Claw. In comes Solgaleo, forced to commit a shield, as this Fire Spin will pick up the knockout. Opponent sends in the Shadow Dragonite, but it's unable to make it to a move. Solgaleo withstanding the damage and picking up the win via the Psychic Fangs. Great lead in the next match, Solgaleo into Dialga. Opponent is going to save switch into Therian Landorus, farming up. We see the switch and the catch of the Sandsear Storm onto the Shadow Gyarados. That, of course, going to be double resisted, and the opponent is now going to be outpaced. Gyarados makes the Aqua Tail before the opponent is able to make it to the Stone Edge. This is debuffed, but Shadow Gyarados has quite nice damage output. The opponent is going to commit the shield. Tough call to make, calling the bait, and it's the Sandsear Storm bait. Oh man, the opponent just having no luck with the baits. Aqua Tail will connect as Shadow Gyarados is able to pick up the knockout. In comes Dialga. Dialga not going to be able to get the farm down before Shadow Gyarados is able to make it to the crunch. This is double debuff, so it's not going to output a lot of damage. In comes Ho-Oh, able to save the Gyarados on 1 HP and send in Dragonite. Dragonite probably going to be hit with the Sacred Fire here, as the Ho-Oh doesn't want to debuff their defense just yet. The Sacred Fire does not debuff for the opponent, and at this point, this game is over. Dragonite goes for the Dragon Claw, gets the shield. This Dragon Claw is going to be able to pick up the knockout, and the Dialga for the opponent just has way too much work to do here. They can send in the Dialga, but it's not going to matter whether they get knocked out by a superpower or get met with the brick wall that is Solgaleo. This Dialga is not sweeping this endgame. The lead luck seems to be turning around, leading Solgaleo into Dialga. Amazing lead. Opponent save switches into Giratina Altered, and we see the counter switch into the Shadow Dragonite, and the opponent throws on very poor timing, giving the Shadow Dragonite a Dragon Tail for free. That's basically the only time Dragon Tail is better than Dragon Breath, is if your opponents don't know how to time charge attacks, and they do it again. They give another free Dragon Tail. Shadow Dragonite is forced to fire off a Dragon Claw, or the opponent would make it to a Dragon Claw number 3. Opponent is going to shield, but they're just going to lose charge attack priority, so they have to give up both shields if they want to grab the final shield, and that's exactly what they're going to do. It's definitely worth it to shield and keep switch advantage. More often than not, if it's a Dialga and a Giratina Altered, it's probably going to be the Kyogre in the back, and there it is right on cue. Kyogre will be met with the Dragon Claw, and Kyogre is not going to appreciate the fact that its energy goes nowhere against Shadow Gyarados. Shadow Gyarados farming up. We see the switch into Dialga as the crunch is thrown by the Shadow Gyarados. Shadow Gyarados is going to switch out. In comes Solgaleo. Solgaleo going for the Psychic Fangs right away, just looking to continue to ramp up the Fire Spin damage. No shields left for the opponent. They have nothing they can do except watch as their Dialga's health just gets eaten away by these Fire Spins. The Draco Meteor connects, but Solgaleo does not mind, able to get the full farm down and leave with back-to-back Psychic Fangs. Opponent could have gone for a Surf there to potentially force a charge attack priority time, but instead they're going to try and go for a farm down, and it's just not going to happen, as Psychic Fangs is going to pick up the victory here after the opponent force closes the app. Now 3-1 in the set, needing a win to hit Legend, and it's a miserable lead. Solgaleo into Ho-Oh. The save switch into the Shadow Gyarados. Ho-Oh staying in, so Shadow Gyarados is able to fire off the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail would do some very nice damage, so the opponent is going to commit the shield. They farm up, and we're going to see a no shield calling the Sacred Fire, but the opponent goes for the Brave Bird, and down goes Shadow Gyarados. That's extremely unfortunate. In comes the Shadow Dragonite. Opponent is now going to send in Zekrom, and Zekrom will be met with a Dragon Claw. This will do quite a lot of damage. Odds are it should be the Dialga in the back. That's the most common team, Ho-Oh Double Dragon, if you see a Ho-Oh lead. We will see the shield on the Fusion Bolt, and now a switch into the Solgaleo. Solgaleo Solgaleo trying to make it to the Psychic Fangs, and Psychic Fangs should come very close to knocking out here. Psychic Fangs into the Zekrom, plus one more Fire Spin will pick up the KO. In comes the Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh going to be firing off the Sacred Fire, and we will see the shield from the Solgaleo. Sacred Fire does not get the debuff. That is some good fortune for sure. And now at the back-to-back Psychic Fangs, opponent cannot afford the shield. That is going to barely not pick up the knockout, but the Fire Spins after will. And in the back, we knew it. It is going to be Dialga. Dialga met with the Psychic Fangs, going for Psychic Fangs number 2, and then trying to make it to a move with the Shadow Dragonite. This is the win con here. Farming up energy, the switch into the Shadow Dragonite, and on 1 HP, making it to the Dragon Claw. Their defense has been double debuffed, so Dragon Claw picks up the knockout. That secures the victory, and that is a 4-1 set. So going to be claiming the rewards. This was at 2980 elo. So that is going to be the legend rank reached at 3030 elo. All in all, I think the Shadow Gyarados is a very interesting anti-meta pick in the Open Master League. To me, the regular Gyarados doesn't feel usable whatsoever, as it just doesn't have the damage output, but the Shadow Gyarados, I've seen people have some very nice success with, and if I do end up finding a high enough IV Shadow Gyarados, it's a mon that I would love to build in the future, as it definitely feels like a lot of teams can be caught off guard by it. I know the team that I used to hit 3500 this season would not be a big fan of seeing a Shadow Gyarados, so it's definitely a mon that has slipped under the radar, but it's a mon that I think people can have some very nice success with. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.